All right. Good morning, everyone. So glad to see you guys. Like they said, my name's Maddox. I'm an editor. I am not an HR professional, as I'm sure you'll be able to tell throughout this panel. But we are joined with some great ones here. This is my second time to be here at a From Day One conference, and I feel really fortunate to be back because I feel like I'll just learn a lot. Like I just sit here, listen to these smart people, and become a better employee back at D Magazine. So I'm sure you will too. We're going to hop into our panelists. I'm just going to kind of introduce their name, and they're going to real quickly tell you kind of what they do, what their company does, and then we'll get into our questions. So we're going to first start with Jennifer Chopelas. She's the head of human resources at Merlin Entertainments Limited. Give her a hand. Yeah,
hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Like Will said, my name is Jennifer Chopelas, and I am very lucky we get to work with fun. So you may recognize us as Legoland Discovery Centers, Peppa Pig World of Play, Sea Life Aquariums. We have attractions across the North America, and I'm fortunate enough to work with our teams at those attractions in an HR capacity. So.
Great, thank you. And she already gave all the free passes to me and my two boys,
yes.
So don't ask her. Don't come up to her at the end.
I've got the hookup, is what he's saying.
Great, well, thank you for being here. Next, we have Chelle O'Keefe. She's Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer of Associa. Tell us a little about what you do.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everyone. So we manage communities at Associa. So if you live in an HOA, everybody loves their HOA, right? If you live in an HOA or a condo, it's not entertainment all the time. We manage 25,000 associations across North America and 14,000 employees in 3 countries.
All right, give her a hand. And that's someone that's been kicked out of a few HOAs. I'm really excited about learning more of my own fault. Next, we have Liz Pittinger. She's head of customer success of Stork Club. Tell us about what that is.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, whenever you're working with any of your vendors, typically you're working with the account management team. So I head the account managers at Stork Club, and we're an end-to-end reproductive health care company. So that means everything from fertility preservation to wanting to get pregnant and needing either artificial or natural assistance, to now I'm pregnant, what do I do? Post-pregnancy care, back-to-work coaching, menopause, men's health, gender-affirming care, and we are very, very proud to have just announced the only nationwide vetted network of birthing doulas in the country.
All right, give it up for Liz. And last, we have Dr. Leah Gas Rodriguez. She's Chief Medical Officer of ActiveHealth.
Thank you, Will. And so I guess I got to be the second person that's not an HR leader in the room with you. And so I am really proud to be here representing ActiveHealth Management. We're a population health company owned by the CVS Health family of companies. And we really focus on empowering people to achieve their best health. So we take a very data-driven approach to identify opportunities for people and then really address it via human-centered connection with those that engage with us. And so as a pediatrician, it's something I'm really passionate about, really building a healthy group of adults to support children on their own path to better health. So really excited to be here with you today.
All right, give it up for Dr. Rodriguez. So we're here today to talk about focusing on the whole person, right? The whole lives of our workers. You actually just talked to my boss, Christine Perez. She was out here earlier with the fireside chat. And she does great at that. She's really an awesome boss. I hope she can hear me there in the back. She does a great job focusing on the whole life. Christine Perez is a great boss. But I know the benefit of that, seriously, and so I'm excited to learn more. We're going to start with Chelle. If we want to focus on the whole person of our employees, we need to take our work seriously in finding out, right, who those employees are. So tell us a little about what you learned about your employees at Associa, and then how that impacted caring for their whole person health initiatives you're doing at the company.
Sure, I think like everyone's company here, certainly we have a budget that we have to look at. And as we look at our benefit offerings and how do we support our employees across the board, for us, it was really about starting with who our employees are. And so our employees are a little different than what you might see when you look broadly at statistics. So as a company, we're 60% female, and our average company age is 47. That's about a decade older than most companies. And so, as all of the news was coming out about the millennials, I mean, we have about a third boomers, a third Gen Xers, a third millennials. So, we really needed to look at who our employees are and therefore support them accordingly. We also broke that down into our key positions. I think we all have key positions that are key to revenue generation or revenue preservation. And one of our key positions that we have several thousand of throughout our company, it's called the community manager, as you would imagine. Those are 75% female and their average age is 53. So I've already shared that I'm looking very forward to the menopause conversation later today, because I do think supporting the whole employee isn't necessarily about offering everything to everyone. It's about, hey, how do we identify our key needs of our employees and make sure that the benefit offering speaks specifically to who they are and what they need.
Yeah, such a great point. On my little team, I'll just tell you a story. On my little team, I'm the only dad, and the rest are all either older or younger than dad age. Mm-hmm. And it's just super important, just the flexibility that our company allows and just all the different things they do to let me pick up my sick kid to do this. And I'd imagine, as your company grows, right, you have to be more strategic about the rules and why does this person get that when we don't? And so that could be tricky, right? And that's kind of the challenge that y'all are up to. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing there. We're gonna go to Jennifer next. In any business, there are inherent differences between the amount of responsibility, compensation, and influence employees have. Tell us about what are some best practices for balancing those realities with the desire for equity or equality in the workplace?
So one of the things that we've really been focusing on this year is rolling out equity versus equality training. And really, what does that look like? So we do a very simple task when I'm doing this training where I just ask them, within your role that you sit in, how can you attribute to equity? So what does that look like for you? And we just put some ideas up there. So if you're a senior leader, it might be that you have the ability to influence when we're talking about budgeting for DE&I initiatives. If you are working with frontline team members, it might be understanding where are our employees at? Are we missing? Do we have a blind spot? Is there something that we need to see? Do we have somebody with maybe food insecurity, so we keep PB&J at all times in the break room? It might be that we're working with multi-generational team members. So somebody who might be older might be misunderstanding what a younger person is saying. So it's really about getting to know our teams, building a rapport, and meeting them where they're at so that we can ensure they have the proper tools to do well in the workplace.
Yeah. That's a great point. Next question is for Liz. Liz, we have a room full of business leaders here whose primary concern is the well-being of their employees, right? But if this were a room full of, let's say, CFOs, right, there might be a more tempered response about thinking about employees' whole person health, right? We think about, you mentioned budgets earlier and that sort of thing, right? That's obviously a factor. We don't have all the money in the world, although I'm sure everyone here would love to give all their employees all the things and do everything wonderfully. Not always the case, right? So can you thinking about whole person health may seem like an added cost and we have an uncertain market and what will the future hold? So can you talk to us a little bit about effective benefits? You can talk about Stork Club as well. How that might actually reduce costs for self-insured employers?
Wow, thanks for that softball question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. No, that really truly is the million-dollar question, though, that everyone is asking, right? And so I think my first advice when you're going in front of a CFO, which you have to do, is to understand what they're going to listen to. Like, what are those key concepts that are really going to draw them in? And so you need to know your data points. And so the first thing that I would recommend is start with your overarching strategy. Is it retention? If it's not, it probably should be, given the great resignation that absolutely is impacting everyone across the country. And SHRM has said it will cost a company 1 to 2 times that leaving employee's salary just to hire and train and get the other person ramped up. So if retention isn't your overarching strategy, I would start there. And then how do you really drive retention? The data shows. Always keep it data-driven when you're talking to a CFO. The data shows if you are a company that has a strong DEI strategy, you are more likely to outperform all of the other companies that don't, in terms of revenue, in terms of market share, and bing, 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 in terms of retention. So DEI actually matters. So how we do this with Stork Club, I thank the millennials. God bless the millennials. These are the people who are not quiet. I don't even call it the great resignation. I call it the great confrontation, because the millennials are out there saying, we're going to leave if you don't have inclusive fertility benefits for everyone. Why? They're waiting later and later to start their families. So if your fertility coverage is through the health plan, then the chances are single women who need to do an egg freezing cycle in order to preserve their fertility will not be covered. Forget about same-sex couples, that just is a non-starter, right? And all of these employees are coming back, data, studies, after study, after study, saying, if you offer this, even if I don't need it myself, it makes me want to join your company and stay there. I had a dinner last night with one of my customers here in Dallas, and she literally said they're hiring people now who are telling them that exact same thing. When do women leave the workplace? When they have babies or when they hit menopause? Mm-hmm. Do you have a DEI strategy that's supporting the women in your workplace? Let's talk about the babies. This is the worst thing. We're in a crisis in America right now. If you're a white woman and you have a child in the United States of America, you are 300% times more likely to die than a white woman in France. If you're a black woman, you're 600% times more likely to die. That should be criminal. And we know what helps with this is called having a birthing doula. Like, you have a woman in the room whose only job is to take care of the person who's giving birth. You're reducing preeclampsia, you're reducing preterm labor, you're reducing NICU stays, you're reducing C-sections. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings on your maternity healthcare spend alone. Like, that program in and of itself, it pays for itself. So to end this, if I were you all going in front of the CFO, know your data points and also recognize this age where women suffer in silence, that needs to go away. And you're the folks in the room who have the power to drive those conversations forward.
Hey, Will, can I pick up on that a little bit there? I just want to grab a couple key points that Liz just talked about. First of all, I would recommend, Liz, you talked about, what's in your benefit plan design. As boring as it might sound, I would highly recommend that you get out your benefit plan design and go through it to better understand your gaps in care, right? Because to your point about data, start with who your employees are, understand the benefits and what is already in the plans that you're offering, identify the gaps of care that then relate back to your employees' data, right? And connecting those pieces together. The other piece that I have found is a lot of your benefit providers offer more things than maybe you even understand. And it's valuable to go through all of your different carriers and better understand. I'll give you an example. One of our insurance carriers for our ancillary products, I won't name names just in case there are competitors in the room, also offered mental health training for our leaders. And that was, I had no idea, but we went through and we were looking for ways to support mental health as part of the whole employee. How do we train leaders, which I think is a really important issue for us? How do we train leaders whose employees come to us and say, I have depression, I have anxiety, I can't come to work today because I need a mental health day. How do we help our leaders do that? And I thought, oh my gosh, again, back to the budget and talking to the CFO, I don't have the budget to go find another vendor to go do this for me. We went through some of our other carriers and identified additional offerings that they had that were part of the fees we were already paying. So I definitely recommend that. And then you can come and find some specialty providers that help you close your gaps in care or help you, I thought you have made a great point, recruit other employees who want to be part of a more supportive work environment that offer a broader suite of benefits.
Yeah, it's a great point. Liz, I knew you could handle the hard question because you brought a notebook. So
She's ready.
I mean, that says it all. She actually has writing in there. I don't know what exactly it says, but also I love the great confrontation. That's a cool phrase. If I ever steal it for an article, I will cite you. It's also what I call every night when I try to get my 3-year-old to brush his teeth. It's a great confrontation. Super fun. Okay, Leah, we're going to go to you next. You're the person that works with all these types of people, right? You help organizations focus on whole person health for their employee benefits standpoint. I want to ask you, what problems are employers looking to solve when contacting a company like ActiveHealth? Can you give us a few popular solutions that you've offered?
Yeah, absolutely. And so first I'll start by saying that I'm hearing all the problems, right, as I'm sitting here with my colleagues that people are facing. And one of the things that I think is really important to start with is really, what is whole person health, right? And I think having that shared understanding of what that means is really key. The approach we take at ActiveHealth, right, is that whole person health really encompasses the body, which is what has been traditionally considered health, the mind, because our heads are connected to our bodies, and that's really important. But it's also really about spirit. And I think that one is actually one that's really important. And spirit can comprise spirituality, and that's an important component of it. But to me, spirit is really kind of that like invisible string that connects you to your inner being and to those people around you. So as we look at our offerings and our solutions, we're really trying to take into account all of those aspects into what we do. And so thinking through our solutions, I think we approach it from I'll break it down into a couple of different ways, right? So when we're thinking about whole person health, we have to be reactive. There are some people who already have high cost conditions, right? Because employers are looking to improve the well-being of their employees and ultimately cut costs, right? We got to go answer to that CFO to make sure that they sign off on the contract. So there's reactive solutions, right? Where we are trying to take a data-driven approach to identifying what opportunities exist for a person whose health is not doing well, whether it be mind, body, and spirit, and to impact that, right, and move them along to try to get that under control and reined in. And we're able to do that, right? So with high-risk case management programs, et cetera, and we're able to reduce the cost, right? We show that we're able to reduce, for example, inpatient stays or inpatient costs by like $200 per member that's impacted per month. And that's one statistic. But as a pediatrician and as a physician, one of the ways that I think we really need to focus, and one of the things we like to do, is really taking more of that proactive approach, right? We have the opportunity to offer people services that will help them take reins of their health before it's become that reactive problem, and actually then is able to help employees stay more productive and engaged at work. So we take a very data-driven approach, and we try to offer kind of that omni-channel or multimodal engagement solution, because people, depending on their needs, their generation, et cetera, will want to engage with us in different ways. So perhaps one of our, employees that is engaged with us is generally a healthy person, so they're only coming to use our services to get the rewards that their employers contract with us to achieve. They might come to answer some surveys, and then we offer some interesting education that helps them, make sure that they are feeling that what they're doing in life is helping them, whether it be about nutrition or sleep or stress management or connecting with others in their community, right? And then there's going to be those that need a little extra push. So we offer things like group coaching. Again, we're bringing in that community element, letting them connect with others that are having similar experiences, and we can help nudge them right on their path to better health. And then there's those that really need that additional assistance, even though they might not be, they might have a chronic condition that they're trying to work to manage, but they might also just be dealing with like stress and lack of, or anxiety and dealing with issues in the workplace. And so we do have more of that high touch coaching service where we're able to listen to that person, hear what matters to them, right? Because I think it's important to understand that employees are not, a monolith. Everyone has different conditions, different aspects, and we want to hear what matters to them and then help work with them to help them achieve their best health. And I think the third way that we're really doing, and this is really forward thinking, is really trying to be not just proactive, but deliberate, right? So, I heard, Jennifer, you mention, right, that one of the things that you're doing in terms of DEI is trying to figure out from your employee, is there food insecurity? Is there transportation issues, and how do you as an employer help them? We're taking the same approach, and we have the advantage of really being data driven. So oftentimes we have the data available that can help us predict what an employee might be doing then, and then we're actually able to also do it in a way that is incredibly sensitive and help you as an employer provide those resources and help, address those social barriers of health or social determinants of health, so that we can partner with you, because that might actually be the barrier that's preventing that employee from being able to fully show up as productive at work or being able to be fully productive with their with taking care of their own health.
Yeah, such a caring way to look at your employees, and I'm sure they appreciate that. Just the fact that you're asking that question, not is your first question, where is this report? Or is your first question, one of these other issues? I'm sure that makes a huge impact. And we talk about boosting productivity, makes you feel good, makes you want to come back. So really great. Jennifer, next question is for you. Merlin Entertainments, we had a pre-conversation, so we cheated a little bit. So they gave me some hints, just so you know. But they're in a conversation about how to bring equality in the workplace into training, integrating it into the culture of the business. Talk to us a little about where you've seen that be successful and also where the challenges are in making that happen.
So I think that for me, some of the successes that I've seen is that it's actually coming and being driven not just from our local site teams, but from our global key stakeholders. So they are essentially putting their money where their mouth is. And it's not a wink and a nod of, we care about diversity. Mm-mm. No, they mean it, and we want it to be part of our culture. We are filtering this trainings down to our team level, and we want our employees to feel their true, authentic self at work. I think that when somebody feels like they can be their true, authentic self at work, they have the ability to make our guests also feel comfortable there. We're working with anyone from 16 years old to up and above. I think Lego says it's 100, up to 100 years old, right? So we love to have fun with everyone. And I think that translates when you are working with your teams there. The challenges that I'm seeing when I'm going out into the field is that we're talking about some areas that are really sensitive. So if I'm sitting in a leadership meeting and I'm talking to someone who's in their 20s and also somebody who might be in their 50s, we're talking about several different generations. And what I'm finding is that someone who's older, and I would even put myself in am I the right person to have a conversation about racial equality? Am I the right person to talk about my transgender employees and what they need if I don't have that viewpoint? But what I feel is that if I'm not willing to have that conversation and to open up that space so it's a respectful space in the workplace, we can't reach that goal of equality. We can't get there. So we all have to be willing to be open and willing to be respectful to each other. We need to be able to be heard and to see our employees. One of the cool things that I have taken away from the latest trainings that I've done, and just a personal observation, pre-COVID, the conversation was a lot different about unconscious bias and social justice. And after the events with George Floyd, I have a site in Minnesota that I work with, and hearing those employees and their firsthand accounts of what was impacting them. When you have an employee telling you that they are seeing the National Guard at their site or that they have a curfew, that's impactful. And trying to find ways to solve those issues has really driven me into that space where, okay, I have a blind spot. I need to be willing to open my eyes, hear what's happening, and listen to my team. Because the younger generation, they're willing to talk to you about it. And I think it's really cool that they're open to having those conversations, and things like unconscious bias are a part of their everyday dialogue. And I think that's really cool. I think the more that we try to open up that path of diversity, when we reach that equality, we make it part of our culture. So.
Yeah, a great point. And you, am I on here? Okay. Yeah, you mentioned sort of all the changes that sort of followed social upheaval and George Floyd, and one thing that I always noticed was just sort of all the companies and organizations and schools. Hey, now we have a chief diversity officer. Now we have a chief equity officer, right? Those were new positions that popped up a lot, which are good things. Now 2 years later, you're seeing stories about, oh, this person was never given any responsibility or budget, or they just cut the position completely, right? And so we talk about that like idea of tokenism, which can apply in a lot of different ways, right? In this HR world, it can apply to, race, it can apply to mental health, and so really trying to think about how do we do this authentically? How do we, avoid just, hey, look, we have a chief diversity officer, great, we're good, but how do we like integrate that into our culture, have it be like a real thing?
We need to mean it.
Yeah, I just have to first applaud you. So I live in Minneapolis, so thank you for going that extra step. That's huge. The other thing I will say, and you brought up a really super point about every single person in this room has unconscious bias. And I was in front of a customer. It's I'm not going to say the name, it's a very well-known international company, serves Gen Z and millennials. And we brought up our menopause solution. And the HR team, very, very young, said, oh, no, that's not our demographic. Well, we do these educational webinars every single month, and the ones on menopause are always the most attended webinars that we have across every single customer. It's absolutely bananas. Yeah. But I mean, that was just the perfect example where we all have to remind ourselves of our own biases.
Yeah.
Great point. Liz, we're going to stick with you. We mentioned sort of pandemic, social upheaval, a lot of things changed. We're going to shift gears a little bit. We know that COVID changed the how, the when, the where we work. A lot more companies, a lot more flexible, but folks still want people back in the office for some things to happen, right? What changes have you seen in the conversation about benefits, ensuring employees understand the why behind some of these plans, even after COVID has had an impact on the way we work?
I love the way you phrased that, understanding the why behind your benefits, because the customer success team, the approach that I've been taking for the last 7+ years in working with benefits teams is your questions are always the same. What benefits should we focus on, and how should we communicate those benefits? And that hasn't actually changed. What's changed since COVID is almost a fear, this immense focus on retention. Like, this is something that's palpable. I can feel this across every single customer. And so we're always trying to remind you folks, remember what your goal is. If your strategy is retention, what's going to support that? It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, know your data points, because there are people who will tell you that's not cool. And I'm here to tell you it means higher revenue, greater market share, and higher retention rates. The data, the science tells us this. And so I try and help teams, and I was talking to a customer last night at dinner, I shared this with you, how you connect the dots between, okay, we're gonna focus on these benefits for this next term. It's not enough to just announce it at open enrollment and you're done. Like, that doesn't do it. People, they don't remember this. They'll sign up for what they need, but then it's out of sight, out of mind. And so I always recommend some sort of communication strategy that goes on throughout the entire year. Now, the person last night, she has an internal communications team, and they want to digest news article going out every single week. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I wouldn't read that, and I love this stuff. So you want to figure out the how often as well, but I'll give you an example of what we were brainstorming last night. It's, okay, you've just done this engagement survey, and you've collected all of this information from your people about what matters to them most. Okay, what benefits do you already have in place that support those needs? Share that. If it's a monthly newsletter, fantastic. If you've got Slack, create an HR benefits news update Slack channel, right? Where you can post something, but tie the dots. Folks, we heard from you that making sure anyone at our company who wants to build a family has the means and the resources to build a family. We support you. And if you weren't aware, here are some ways that we do that. And you may have multiple solutions that do that. Go for it, but tie it to some sort of theme, because they're not connecting the dots. If you connect the dots for them, that's how you're going to win over their hearts and minds.
Can I pick up a couple pieces too that she mentioned? So I think, if we're in a room full of HR professionals and we keep talking about the Great Resignation and employee retention, I said to a friend of mine the other day, I said, I have PTSD at this point over the Great Resignation. I'm hopeful that that's a past. We're starting to see certainly our turnover go down, but it has been a benefit of, we have really amped up the conversation around employee retention. During the pandemic, I was actually at a benefits seminar. It was the first kind of in-person seminar that I had gone to in California. And the entire 2.5 days was about, different benefit offerings and even a little bit about, the topic that we have today. But one of the biggest takeaways that I took from that conference, and also as we talk about supporting the whole person, you as a company cannot support the whole person unless you're supporting leadership development. Because at the end of the day, that employee's experience is so much driven by their leader. And whether it's the leader better understanding their benefits package and communicating, the leader understanding equity and equality, and being able to say words like bias, and to be able to talk about things that people feel very personally connected to. And so, as we talk about supporting the whole person, I just want to encourage that we're also talking about how do we support our leaders, because they are the day-to-day connection with our employees, and they're the primary communication vehicle as well. I love all the technology and Slack and all the different channels that we have now. And at the same time, we all talk about wanting to be seen and heard. Yes. And people want to be seen and heard by their leader, and they want to be able to have conversations. And those leaders are scared sometimes, right, of having the conversations of how do I support this person? And you made a comment about, this person might need this and this person might need this. And as an HR person, I say, well, how do you create flexibility and fairness? And your leaders are struggling with that too, right? And so how do we go in as leaders and support them so that they can then support the whole person?
That's a good point. And we have that budget conversation, and the CFO looks at all these benefits that no one knows about and no one is using, and they're like, well, no one's even, let me see the numbers on this. So I'm sure the education piece is, will prove its value and hopefully, pay those dividends down the line. But yeah, that communication piece is really important. Lee, we're going to come to you. You mentioned earlier a pediatrician by trade, and you put it really well, and I'll butcher it, I'm sure, but you said, that you see your role now as sort of ensuring that children's caregivers are healthy. So can you tell us a little bit more about the connection between this whole person aspect of employee well-being and how it connects to positive home lives and attitudes about the workplace?
Absolutely. And so I think, I've heard a resounding theme during our conversation right now around the impact of the pandemic. And if we saw anything about the pandemic, is that home life and work life were completely blurred, right? Like, who wasn't on a Zoom call where someone's dog was barking or someone's toddler was asking for a snack, or both of those at the same time, right? And it became very much the reality of what people started to understand. But that also means, right, that what we are now dealing with is the reality that we can't pretend anymore that work stress impacts the home and home stress, right, impacts the workplace. So going back to that concept that we really have to support that whole person, addressing those stressors, et cetera, is very important. One of the things that we've done is actually very much incorporated that aspect of what we would consider a mental well-being check-in into what we do. And it's that, first of all, it's eliminating the bias, right? It's around the idea that it's okay to sometimes have a good day and sometimes have a bad day. And it's okay to actually do that, like, check in with yourself to figure out what you're going to do about it, right? So what we've taken as the approach is having that mental health check-in available to people who go onto our platform. And then most importantly, then there's the so what, right? If you're doing great, let's keep it up and let's continue encouraging you, right? We know that things like mindfulness, et cetera, are really helpful to maintaining a person's well-being. But if you're not doing so great, then we have resources and tools and we can help you. And I think that as employers, making sure that your employees have access access to the education and the knowledge, and being okay with saying, hey, check in with yourself, how are you doing? And we have something that can help is really important. And I'll just touch on like what you said around the caregivers, right? So one of the things that I like to say, there's a lot of talk around generational wealth, and I like to talk about generational health, right? And it's the concept that as you are, keeping all the various generations, whether it's your boomers, your millennials, or your Gen Xers, I sometimes forget which one I'm in. But as you are trying to address the health of all of those different populations, one blurs really into the other. And one of the things that you're able to do, right, is if you are able to give your employees tools to make better choices that really impact their health and well-being, those are actually trickling down to their home life as well, right? So kids are watching their parents. That's the greatest, teacher that they have. And they're watching their caregivers, because not every kid is being raised by a parent. So if you're empowering those adults to be as healthy as possible, those kids will also absorb those health habits, and you are actually investing in the future generation of employees. So that's why I feel like I've transformed my own career from being that pediatrician in the exam room to actually impacting the health of children, to really looking at how can we help adults be as healthy as possible, because they're the ones that are going to have the greatest influence on a kid, far more than any antibiotic prescription for an ear infection I ever filled.
Yeah, great point. No, that one hits home for me as well. We got time for one more question for Chelle. So many of our employees in this room, and I think maybe your company especially, are in what's called the sandwich generation, where they are sort of sandwiched between raising children and caring for aging parents. I am also in that situation. So tell us a little about what opportunities you've found to address this population's diverse needs, and how do you ensure employees are aware and access of the tools that are available to them?
Yeah, so again, I think it all goes back to where we started, which is with the data and really understanding your employee population. But interestingly, we did have some prep calls prior to this panel, but I listened to a New York Times podcast this week that talked about the sandwich generation is actually getting younger, and more millennials now are taking care of aging parents than ever before. And so, the sandwich generation used to be adults in their 50s, right? Having kind of teenage children and then taking care of their elderly parents. That is now shifting considerably. And so your millennial population is also starting to look at, how do I support my parents who are aging, who may be ill, and also grow my career at the same time? That's a really difficult challenge. So one of the things that we don't talk about a whole lot in the benefit space, I think, is elder care. And there are a lot of offerings around elder care, and how do you help your employees understand the offerings in that space? Because again, whether you're supporting employees in their 50s or you're supporting employees who are younger, that is becoming a bigger need in the overall space. We talk about childcare all the time, and certainly, want to partner with great partners in that space. At the same time, elder care is really important. Also, I would say, these are things, you talk about communications. Your ancillary benefit products like your long-term disability programs and long-term care products. So different than long-term disability, but long-term care. Getting a 20-year-old, probably at a Legoland to think about long-term care is a difficult sell. But getting your folks who are caring for maybe aging parents to think about their own long-term care needs is a little bit more of an interesting conversation that I think we need to start having, because certainly as we experience that, if any of us in the room are experiencing caring for children and caring for aging parents, we also don't want to pass that to our own children, right? So when we talk about supporting the whole employee, how do we think of all of these different spaces? I get tired a little bit when I hear all of our conversation, because it's a heavy responsibility for an employer, but it's a really important one as we talk about caring for the whole person.
Right. You talk about a drag on productivity. When I'm thinking about, what am I doing with mom? Is she going to go here? Is she going to go there? Oh yeah, and my kid, and you have that balance. And I know I have tons of friends, like young elementary kids and parents, dementia, these questions. And I think that's obviously just a demographic shift and parents getting older. And I see myself, I'm like doing the math on me. I'm like, well, if my kids have kids when I had kids, I'm going to be old when they have kids. So it's kind of a bummer, but that's just part of the way we've kind of worked through things.
I know we're at time, so in 10 seconds and under, I'm just going to piggyback on what you just said. We integrate with all of your other benefits, right? And my challenge to all of you is find partners who are willing to do that. If they're not willing to highlight all of the other great benefits that you have so that when they're going to that particular vendor site, they can see everything in totality, the width, the breadth of everything that you're offering. If they're not doing that, demand it, because you're the ones who are in the driver's seat.
All right, well, thank you guys for being here. Let's give our panelists a hand.